Hello, and thank you for joining me for today's webinar on scenarios. Today, we are going to be taking a look at how to create a scenario and enter an opening position. So thank you for joining me today. So without any further ado, let's get started. I'm your host for today. My name is Sudarshan Radali, and I'm a Partner Success Manager here at Figured. Before we do kick into it though, I would like to cover just some basic housekeeping rules just to help everyone have the best experience on this webinar today. So the first point is we recommend you close down as many apps as you can on your computer during the webinar to give Zoom the best opportunity to stream clearly through to you. If you lose what is happening on the screen, look for this icon that you see on the right hand side here, the Zoom logo, along the bottom of your screen. Hopefully clicking on it will reopen our webinar. And lastly, if you have a question during the webinar, please click on the Q&A option at the bottom of the screen and put it there. If we can, we will answer back during the webinar. Alternatively, we might cover it off at the end. Great, let's get started. So I'd like to quickly talk about our webinar series and what you can expect to see in the upcoming sessions. We will be running 2 sessions each week for the 4 weeks on a Tuesday and a Thursday. Our first 2 webinars will cover the importance of aligning your long-term financial goals and ambitions. We look closely at how we achieve this using Figured's scenario planning tool. The second tool will take a look at planning and the planning grid tool itself that helps you turn your long-term plan into an actionable 12-month plan. Great, back to today's session. So let's take a look at what we're going to cover today. So we're going to take a look at why it's important for farmers to be prepared and have a plan. We're going to look at an introduction to the scenario tool, and then we'll get into the tool itself and look at how to create your first scenario, how to set up your opening position, and then we'll end off with some questions. Awesome, so we'll be covering some great content you may need assistance with down the track. There are tools and resources available to you, such as our live chat support. We do ask that you reach out to your accountant in the first instance, and if they do need you to get help from Figured, they will redirect you to our Green in-app Apple and our customer success team. Our YouTube video tutorials are a great source of content. So our YouTube channel has great content ranging from previous webinars through to detailed tutorials on specific areas of the application. So this is a great place to get yourself up to speed on all things Figured. And these webinars that we're on right now will also be posted up there should you miss them or need to hear them again. Our blog is another great source of content. Here you can find case studies of farmers around the country seeing success through Figured. We also have interviews and contributions from industry members covering a wide range of farming topics in New Zealand and overseas. So I'd like to talk now about why around future planning. Why is it important for farmers to future-proof their business? In a constantly changing world that is growing increasingly volatile, we're faced with new and unexpected challenges each year. Knowing where your business is now and where it's headed is vital to ensuring survival through difficult times and profitability during the good. Most recently, we've seen a long nationwide drought putting farms on the back foot heading into the new year. The onslaught of COVID-19 and subsequent lockdowns has further increased the pressure on the economy. These events require a strong understanding of your farm's financial position, along with a good grasp of where your weaknesses and strengths are so you can make the right decisions at the right time. Recent events have seen meat processing, for example, slowed down by up to 40% due to distancing measures implemented within the processing facilities. These have been impacting farmers who are now faced with a reduced income stream and increased costs to keep stock live on farm. On the dairy side, Farmgate has a stable milk forecast to end the current year. However, the 2021 forecast is looking at a much lower price. Farmers need to be prepared for this, and this would have an immediate impact on farms seeing an adjusting of expenses to maintain an acceptable profit margin. So in summary, these factors, among others, make everyday decisions even harder for farmers. It's driving farmers to look at strengthening their equity position by focusing on paying down debt and talking to their bank manager about potentially consolidating some existing debt. So with interest rates being at an all-time low, this is also a good time to renegotiate any existing rates. Now, with everyday decision-making becoming increasingly harder, it's so important to know where you stand so you can make the right choices at the right time. The now, where, how concept helps you plan for today and the future so you can be confident and drive success. Applying this concept to Figured's planning application will allow you to achieve this goal. So if we take a look now closer at the scenario tool, the scenario tool lets you see further down the road with a detailed 2 to 10 year plan. You start by building now, This is a business as usual plan that takes your last 12 months of financial data and steps it forward by 5 years. Doing this helps create a picture of where your business is headed in its current state. This becomes your guiding North Star, and sometimes you might find that your current trajectory is not what you expected and an immediate change might be required. The where is your tailored scenario plan for any future event. This could be a goal you may currently have, such as selling certain portions of the business, or succession planning to help the next generation take over. You can also plan for a rainy day or emergency and make sure your business can stand up against a crisis or price fluctuations in the market. The how is the 12-month plan that helps you translate your long-term goals into an actionable and achievable short-term goal. Now that we've covered the why around why planning is important, let's take a look at the scenario tool itself and see what core benefits it has that helps us achieve this. First, let's look at the core benefits that the tool offers. You can easily create your starting position using the existing financial data you have within Figured and Xero. This is really powerful as it not only reduces the time needed to complete the scenario, but greatly improves the accuracy of the future plans as they are built around your past accounts. Enter your assets and liabilities to create a complete picture of your business position. So we also calculate some bank statistics such as your equity position and loan to value ratio. Now these are really handy when talking to your bank about future lending or about new interest rates. As we covered earlier, you can model any change that you want. Easily make a copy of your base scenario and model changes such as new purchases, new lending, selling off existing assets, increasing your operation size, leasing out a block, or preparing for a drop in global prices. Now, without further ado, let's take a look at how we can create our first scenario. So some of you might be on the line with your scenarios open that you've already been given access to, ready to work along with me. Others may not have access as yet or still waiting for access. Reach out to your accountant and they'll be able to help you get online. Now let's take a look at how we create our first scenario. To create our first scenario, the first thing we do is navigate to scenarios using the menu bar on the left, as we can see there. From here, we select Create New Scenario over on the top right-hand side. And that's going to allow us to create our first scenario. First, we need to enter the details of our scenario. Enter the name. If this is your base scenario, name it as status quo. Next, we need to select the type. This is used to help you sort through your scenarios. There's a number of different types that you can choose from. They're not being used currently at this stage for anything more than just sorting your scenarios, but it's always good to choose one so to know where you are. Below that we have description. This is entirely up to you. It's an optional field, but it's always great to write a description so you know what the scenario's intention is. Now we can select the start date of the scenario. You can only choose the most recent financial year and of course future years. Next, select your duration between 1 to 10 years and then the privacy type. All scenarios are shared with users that have access to your farm, so selecting private will not allow any other users access. Next, we select your farm operation type, which will determine the display metrics that you see below. Once you're done with this, you can go ahead and click Next on the bottom right, and we can move on to looking at importing our data source. So the first thing we want to do is we can choose to start our scenario from a blank template, as you can see on the right-hand side there, or we can load in existing financial data from Figured and Xero. So let's import our data source by selecting Import and use My Farm Data. So you can choose to import either actuals, forecast, or a combination of actuals and forecasts. Do this by selecting the data type and then the actuals to date. In this example, I'm selecting actuals plus forecast with actuals to March 2020. You can import on a cash or profit basis. And more importantly, at the bottom here, we can select our income and expense source. For income, you can import your operation trackers within Figured and also any other income you've coded in Figured and Xero. Ticking farm working expenses will also bring through all your coded expenses from the previous financial year. This is a great feature as that specific expense amounts and times of the year in which they are spent are integrated into the scenario model. This will improve the accuracy in future years. Once we're satisfied, you can click on Import and Create on the bottom right and our scenario will be created. Great, now that our scenario is created, we are shown the opening position page. We can see a dairy cattle on hand asset has been imported in because we chose to import our tracker. So it's a good idea to have your most recent balance sheet and any loan information handy with you so you can quickly enter in your assets and liabilities. So without further ado, let's get started by entering an asset. We can do so by clicking on Asset, as we see just there, and this is going to take us to a new opening asset window. Now we're going to enter in a rural property asset, and as you can see, we can take the total and effective area as well as the price per hectare. There are many other asset types to choose from, such as residential property, machinery, equipment, livestock, shares, and more. So once you're done, go ahead and click Save. Now that we're done with that, let's put in some loan information. So to do that, go ahead and click on Add Liability, and we get taken to the Add Opening Liability window. So the first thing you want to do is choose a loan type and provide a name. Enter your current owing amount for the loan. For the facility limit, enter the original amount of the loan before any payments began. Next, choose the repayment type and enter the required details. So this is where you can check your loan details to confirm which payment type you're on. In this example, we're on a payment plan, which means a portion of interest and principal is taken out for each payment. You can also choose from interest only or a fixed principal amount weekly, monthly, and annually. So this is where your bank statements or your internet banking potentially could provide you some really handy information like what repayment type you're on and the terms as well as the interest rate. So you can hit save and continue entering the remainder of your loans. Now what you can see here is that we have a completed farm. It's important to remember not to get too detailed with your assets and liabilities. You want to keep them limited to your major assets and loans. If you have a number of smaller loans or assets, you can consolidate them under the asset or liability type of other. This reduces clutter in this scenario while still maintaining your information. As you can see here, we see our assets and liabilities. Now on the bottom right, what you are going to be able to see is those handy stats I spoke about earlier. So we'll see the asset and liability position along with the equity position and the LVR. Now this completes our opening position. So hopefully you've gone and followed along and entered your opening position. Next, we'll take a look at how to enter in our proposition, and we can do so by clicking on Next on the bottom right. The proposition page is where we enter the remaining data for the scenario, as well as see the data that was imported. Now the first area is the opening position, which we've already done. The next area is the proposition itself, where we can edit current assets and liabilities and add future assets or liabilities. Next is income and expenses, where we see our imported tracker and expense information. This is where we make edits and add any new income and expense items. The last is the summary report, where we can see highlights of the information being entered into the scenario, and it's a way for us to be able to quickly verify information in the scenario without having to switch over to the reports page. Awesome. Now let's expand the proposition section and add in a new future dated purchase. To do this, click on the Add Proposition button. Now the great part about adding a proposition is the ability to create an asset purchase and simultaneously add a funding source for this purchase. Just choose your asset type and enter the details, then click the option Add Funding Source for this purchase. Then go ahead and press Save. This will save the asset and now take you to a new loan window where we'll have inputted the amount and name and allow you to complete the remaining information such as the repayment type and any associated interest rates. This is a quick and easy way to test out purchases before heading in to talk to any dealers or lenders. It gives you the clarity to help you make the best decision before taking out any new debt. Awesome. So expanding the opening position will also show you all the assets and liabilities that you entered in the opening position. You can edit these items by selecting anywhere on their title, like so. First, let's take a look at editing an asset. We see here that we can revalue or sell an asset. To revalue an asset, simply just select the date of the revaluation and enter in the value as at that date. And we can see here, we brought the value down by 10,000 as at 1st of June 2020. To sell an asset, choose the sale details such as your date, your price, and your sales expense if there is one. You can either sell the asset at this point and the proceeds will go into a system bank account that sits behind each scenario. Alternatively, you can allocate all or some of the proceeds directly to your existing loans. To do so, just select the loan amount and make sure you tick Reduce Limit. Next, let's look at editing an existing loan. Here you have a restructure option that lets you change the repayment type at any given date as many times as required. You can then go ahead and enter those details in by selecting the repayment type, the interest rate, and any start dates that you would like that to apply for. And this could be good for testing or to actually mirror changes you've actually made. Now, knowing what you can afford to pay back and when will help you control the lending conversation with your bank and give you the confidence in effectively managing your debt. Now, you also have the option of adding a one-off repayment, and you can do so down the bottom here, where you can add in the date, the amount, and also choose for it to reduce the limit. So a good way to either mirror existing payments that you may have made towards debt or have a go at seeing what some cash applied to a loan could really mean to the early repayment options. Now, what you can also do is you can enter in a drawdown schedule or any variable interest rates by expanding both those options on this edit liability window. And there you have it. That brings us to the end of this session. Hope everyone has got some great value today and can go ahead and start creating your own scenarios. Now, don't forget, there's a second part to this where we cover off income, expenses, reports, and also exporting and entering information into our planning grid. You can find that along with any other associated videos on our YouTube channel. You can also reach out to us, like I mentioned earlier, through our live chat if you've got any questions. Remember to reach out to your accountant in the first instance, and they will either direct you to our green bubble or they'll reach out to us themselves. As I mentioned just now, video tutorials are a great place to get yourself up to speed on Figured. And also the blog has a few great reads to help you get up to speed on what's happening around the country in farming and finances. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope everyone has a great day.